escapes and conundrums. "Hey, cutie, you come here often?" a Sonier asks, draping over Santiago within seconds of him and his new friend arriving. "Because if so, then Actually, I'm here to help," he states even as dusk soar, the Sonier he had been speaking to about helping put together a Sonier culture, sighs. He knows he's not getting it, but he's not in the mood. "Oh, you can help me with trying to help Sonier as a people, actually," he says, and she pauses, considers, and then gives him an odd look. "What?" "You know, culture and identity, trying to." He gets shoved hard. "Oh, little Tret thinks he can just show up and make everything better. Oh, wow, like we can't do it ourselves." She starts ranting as her grip tightens around his neck, and she reveals that she's got sharp nails that are trying to dig through the collar of his shirt. "Not what I said," Santiago returns. "I'm sure Mr. Oldest Race in the Galaxy just wants to save everything with." "Lady, I'm human," Santiago states. "We have culture to spare, and I'm trying to help." "Oh la dee da. Looks like we're getting sloppy seconds with some kind of—" She doesn't get to continue as his elbow slams into her stomach. Going for the kidneys or liver is out on an alien race, so he has to risk her. A slop of half-digested blood and meat scraps shoots out of her mouth, and he wrinkles his nose. No stomach acid, so the really nasty bit from something on Earth puking isn't present, but it's still not a nice smell. He grabs her by the top of her head and hefts her up, swatting away a few scratching attacks from her feet, even as she flaps her wings to try and get control of things again. "Enough," he says, catching her feet instead and letting the claws sink in and draw blood. Her being held on the head and feet makes her fighting rather pointless. You whole city decides to try and copy something out of a comic book. That's borrowed. I'm looking around to get some good suggestions on how to make it really yours." "What?" she asks as she stops flapping and seems more baffled by the fact that he only shifts things a bit and easily has her balanced on one hand with only a little bit of axiom reinforcing him. Sonier are very light for their size. "It's normal. It's completely normal. My own ancestors took bits from their homelands and bits from their new adoptive home to create something new. Interbreeding with the locals also helped." "Oh, so you are here to, can you put me down now?" she asks after a few moments, and he raises an eyebrow. "Are you going to attack again?" he asks her. "No." "Love that you had to think about that," he says, letting go of her head and tossing her up a bit via the feet, and she flutters down with ease. She wipes her mouth with the back of her hand and spits. "Why did you get so angry?" Dusksoar asks. "I mean, we do need something of our own, right?" I don't know. I was hoping to get penetrated in all the best ways, not some strange discussion on culture and belonging. I want to get laid and I want to get paid. I don't want to be preached at by some super tret." "Human." An amused Santiago interjects. "Whatever," she exclaims. "So, you don't want to hear about our ideas?" Dusksoar asks, and the Sonier almost says no. Stops, considers, thinks, then flinches and pats her stomach. "I just lost my last meal due to you." "Then don't strangle highly trained and heavily armed soldiers. It's bad for your health," Santiago states. "Buy me a meal and I'll go over everything, child," she offers. "I'm Dusksoar, this is Santiago, and we've got some great ideas. I'm Bloodwing." The new Sonier introduces herself. "I also play Bane when I'm forced to be a terrible luchador for the sake of entertainment and training," Santiago says. "That's you. But you... Wait a minute," Bloodwing says, suddenly reaching forward and feeling his chest through Tish's loose t-shirt. Oh, hello. You promised to break the bat, but would you be willing to breed it?" "Oh my God, woman, can you get any more blatant?" "Is that a challenge?" "I fear answering that." "So, Bane does fear the Batwoman. Interesting," Bloodwing says, but she backs off. Clearly the elbow had taught her to respect his personal space. Maybe it was being held nigh helpless in his grip that did it. All right, so if you need to be bribed to go over the ideas we've been bouncing off each other, where do you recommend? And no strip joints, Santiago asks. The condition at the end makes Dusk Soar snort hard as Bloodwing outright laughs at his tone. There's a great shop nearby, she says before pulling out her communicator. Online menu? What? No, I'm sending an image of the mess to the city's cleaning drone services. Give the girls with their hands on the controls something to do. Ah, right. I didn't think about the mess. Come on then. I want a crimson smoothie with all the fixins. You. Blood so near. Dusk Soar complains and gets a long tongue stuck out at her by Bloodwing. Santiago just shakes his head at how quickly the mood had shifted around. Is it a species thing? A local thing or a personal thing he just got lucky with? Roughly 3 minutes later, and they're in front of a restaurant when a slight humming noise has Santiago look up to see a small cube floating through the air with neon lights on the side. Just the cleaning drone human. Of course, with how savage and primitive your race is, I'm shocked you're not worshipping it. Bloodwing snarks at him. Oh, you don't want me to worship things. Otherwise, I'd start chucking half the city down the volcanic trenches. Really? Dusk Soar asks in shock. No, but savages that brutal make great bad guys in action films, he replies. Did it ever actually happen? Dusk Soar asks and he pauses. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. There's a good chance it was just some over-the-top writer's idea of a dramatic enemy for a hero to overcome. Santiago explains as he follows Bloodwing into the small restaurant. More of a juice bar, but it has solid menu items. What the? Back for more? The girl manning the counter asks before her gaze shifts to Santiago, rakes over him and then goes back to Bloodwing. I got a good chunk of it knocked out of me and an agreement to have it replaced. I'll be covering both these women, Santiago says, and Dusk Soar looks back at him. Really? She asks. Indulge. I have a big paycheck and need to get a taste of the local stuff anyways. Blood or fruit? Dusk Soar asks him, and he considers. That's right. The species is split. One half carnivore, the other half herbivore. No omnivores. I'll have a small one of each, and you literally have a part of the menu that says roughage. Wow. A small of both basic roughage types. You're human, aren't you? The girl at the counter asks. Better. He's Bane, Bloodwing exclaims. Really? I saw that. It was so cool. Oh, when is Deathstroke coming back? He was a little shorter than in the comics, but he fought like he stepped right out of the pages, the cashier asks in sudden excitement. That one in question was technically on vacation at the time, but we can arrange another one. Deathstroke is easier to do than Bane. I need to be able to use the venom and bulk up mid-fight as Bane. Slap on armor and use the right weapons and boom, Deathstroke. Deadshot too. Cool. Oh, I'll need to sign up at least once. It looks like so much fun. But I'm not much of a fighter, so... I offered some suggestions for the riddles, but I didn't get it right. If there was something like a training course offered by someone in full costume, would you go for it? I'd love to. I'd pay for that. Excellent. Looks like I've got something to bring up when I get back to base, he says, and the cashier is outright bouncing as she quickly makes the food. All right, so here's the list of what we've been thinking. The idea is to pass these around Sonir settlements and try to get an architectural style going. Make it so that places the Sonir live have a Sonir look, Santiago says after they all sit down and he passes over his communicator with the list opened. Bloodwing starts poring over it before pausing and looking up at him. That's it? Building design? We just started half an hour ago at most. He defends himself and she lets out an odd sound before reading over things. The statues, she asks. It's something that used to be common all over the place on certain human buildings. They were there to ward off evil spirits. For you, though, it could be a marker of great landing platforms, places to think, or just decoration. The idea is to celebrate the sonir, Santiago says. Building tall with multiple places to enter is common for flight-capable races, but statues of sonir everywhere would break up the silhouette of a building and make it distinctly your own. It also helps we've already done that, mostly because a comedy member said that gargoyles would be too scary and we needed something more friendly. Well, for once a comedy got something right. Another good thing to keep going with would be the blimps. With Axiom technology, they can be easily made very safe. They're very distinctive, and with the sheer mobility of the sonir, practical. Any sort of public service building, restaurant, or even an entire district could be built into one if you make it big enough. You want us to take to the skies. You're a soaring species. You emphasize flight far more than most others. Metak are great flyers, but they're small and they stand upright, as do Pavarus, Charby, Urthani, and Cloud Nagasha. They're more suited to be on the ground or grabbing onto a tree trunk. But posture alone tells me that a sonir is happier in the air if she's not hanging from the roof. So let's get you in the air. Let's restructure your homes to be for you and yours. Make big, wide doors and hallways you can fly in, high roofs to hang off of. Make your home yours, Santiago says, and Bloodwing looks at him oddly. You're oddly passionate about making a sonir culture. Never do anything halfway. And besides, even if it's not for me, what I've got bouncing through my head is beautiful. I'd love to see it come to life. High arching buildings designed to be flown within, with all the props and furniture up near the ceiling so you can comfortably hang while operating them. Doesn't that sound nice? It does, but that's going to need so much more space. Bloodwing mutters and thinks. Or is it, with expanded space totems? You can build these buildings and expansions into existing ones. Tall structures with landing pads and statues on the outside, expanded spaces inside so you can fly to your heart's content. If nothing else, it should be more comfortable and with just a little more modification. Plenty of room and comfort for guests as well. Exactly. You don't have to kick out the rest of the galaxy in order to make room for yourselves. You just need to make room for yourselves, Santiago says, and he can see Bloodwing's imagination run wild. That's so good. What about things like music and food, she asks, even as he sips the blood smoothie he had bought. He doesn't dislike it, but it's not something he's going to go looking for. You already have an interesting thing happening with the divide between herbivore and carnivore menus despite things being in the same place. That's something that needs to be a bit more personal touch. Architecture, especially smarter architecture that helps the people, can be mandated, but food is something more natural. And it's not a place you want to force things. You'll get a fight over it. Probably not as big a fight as you will, Dusksore says, looking pointedly down where his fingers are grasping at the last few pieces of fruit that he bought as roughage. What about music? Again, that's more personal. But if we encourage sonir artists to make their own sounds and then refine them, then we'll get something uniquely sonir sooner or later, Santiago says. The cashier pipes up. Of course she's been listening in. Yes? Well, what about new ways of playing some instruments? Hanging above a circle string and pluck it rather than having it held in your legs? She asks. Good idea. Santiago compliments her. If it's a good sound, Bloodwing says. And that's if we can get people to go with this? Your biggest failure is failing to try. Santiago returns before his communicator goes off. And that's my warning. I got to start heading back to base.